Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Gina K Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. In today's video, I have a trio of projects to share with you today. We're calling this the Birthday Bash Trio. First up is the card. Let's get into that project now. To create my card, today I'm going to be using the Gina K Designs Birthday Bash stamp set. And this stamp set has got some really cool images to create some layered slices of cake and some stacks of cake layers. And it's also got a layering banner. Super fun. So I've pulled out the larger piece of cake. This is should be the base of your cake, the larger piece, and I've got a piece of Gina K Designs cardstock. This is the layering weight white cardstock in my MISTI, and I've just got it pinned down with my magnet. I'm going to put that stamp on the door of my MISTI, and I'm going to rub away that manufacturing residue, and I'm going to stamp with Gina K Designs Apple Mint ink. I'm going to ink up my stamp real well, and then I'm going to close the door of my MISTI and press. And I do double stamp where I feel necessary if I don't get a good transfer of ink. Once I'm happy with the impression, I'm going to slide my cardstock down in my MISTI just so that I can get the next layer of cake on top of it. And I'm going to stamp that with Gina K Designs Sweet Corn ink. Okay. And then I'm going to go to this stamp set and grab the smaller piece of cake layers. And I'm just going to line that up on the center of my panel. I'm going to ink up this stamp with Gina K Designs Innocent Pink ink. So I'm going to stamp this one a couple of times because it's so light and I wanted to get a nice crisp result of pink. So I'm happy with that. The last image I'm going to stamp here is the candle, and I'm going to pop that on the top of my cake stack, and I'm going to ink that up with Sweet Mango ink. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have used second generation stamping, meaning stamp off the ink once and then stamp, because I felt like this was a little bit too bright for this sort of pastel color palette that I was going for. But it's okay, we won't worry about it. I'm going to stamp the flame of that candle with Gina K Designs Sweet Corn ink, and then I'll come back and stamp the center of that flame with Sweet Mango. Now I got it off a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I decided to grab the little sort of bubbly looking stamp, and I'm going to stamp that around the background of my card with Gina K Designs Sea Glass ink. And I'm just creating some fun birthday confetti back there, and I'm happy with the way that looks. So now I'm going to grab some dies. I've got Gina K Designs Master Layouts. I've got two different sets here. I've got Master Layouts 4, and I'm going to die cut a black panel with a scalloped border. And then I've got Master Layouts die set 5, and this stitch die fits inside of the Master Layouts 4 scallop die. I'll have all of that linked in the description box down below in case that's just too complicated to pay attention to. So I've got all my panels cut out, and I'm just going to heat emboss my sentiment. Now I'm going to heat emboss that big chunky birthday wishes, and I've got my scrap of black cardstock. I'm going to use an acrylic block, ink up my stamp with Versamark clear sticky ink, and then I'll stamp this down onto my cardstock, and then I'll lay it over top a piece of a coffee filter and sprinkle my Gina K Designs white embossing powder. This is the fine detail white, and I'll sprinkle that over my stamped image, just tap off the excess. And meanwhile, off to the side, I've got my heat gun warming up so it's good and hot when I bring it to my paper. So I'm going to funnel all of my embossing powder back into the little jar here so we don't waste anything. And I'm going to heat emboss that sentiment until all of those little powder granules are smooth and melted. And the last thing I'm going to do here is cut out my sentiment with the coordinating dies. Okay, so I'm going to take all of these elements and I'm going to stick them all together. I've got some sticky dot liner here, and I'm just going to adhere all of my panels. I'll take my cake layer and adhere it to the black scalloped border. And then I'm going to take a piece of craft foam and pop it up in behind my cake layers panel. I just like the dimension that that gives, and I'll adhere all of that down to my card front and pop my birthday wishes in front of the card. The last thing I wanted to do was add some sequins. I just pulled out something from my stash. This is just a flat sequin with no hole in it. It's just a little confetti-like sequin. And I'll sprinkle those around my card. And I've got a jewel picker and some liquid adhesive in a fine tip bottle. So I like the way that this fine tip bottle lets me put just the tiniest little drop of glue. And that's it. And I paired this with a Gina K Designs sea glass envelope. And here is a close-up look at the finished card project. This turned out so super cute. I love that little layering cake. The color possibilities are endless with this stamp set. So much fun. Okay, next up for the Birthday Bash trio, we've got the tag. I love making tags because they're so quick and easy to create. It gives you a chance to really play with your stamps, and the landscape is small, so you can create something fairly quickly. So for this project, I decided I wanted to use that slice of cake that comes inside of the Birthday Bash stamp set. So I've got a piece of cardstock loaded up into my MISTI, and I put the stamp in that little tiny weird looking triangle piece. I loaded those up onto the door of the MISTI, and I'm going to ink these up with Gina K Designs Lemon Drop ink. I close the door of the MISTI and press on that ink and make sure I get a good transfer. And then I'm going to grab the inside of this piece of cake. So this creates like the little inside layers with all those cute little bubbly textures. And so I'm going to stamp this with some white pigment ink. Okay, so I stamped this once, and I should have left this here. I ended up stamping it again and ruining my little piece of cake. I left this in because I wanted to show you the process on how to create this little piece of cake. So the first time around it looks great, and then I felt like it needed some more ink. And the second time around, my cardstock was not in the corner of my MISTI, and I lost some of that detail and that little bubbly effect inside of the cake. I thought, well, I'll just redo this. So I decided to start with the little inside of the cake. Instead of tossing out the project, I'm just going to keep going. So I flipped around my cardstock, and I'm going to use the inside of this stamp, and I'm going to stamp with pigment ink again, and then I'm going to heat emboss this. So I'm going to grab some Gina K Designs fine detailed white embossing powder, and I'll sprinkle that over my image and heat set that until it's smooth and melted. And then I'm going to grab a Gina K Designs blending brush, and I'm just using my yellow brush. I'm wiping off any of the previous ink that may have been on my brush. And I'm going to pick up that ink with my little blending brush, and I'm just going to blend over top of that cake. So the heat embossing is going to resist any ink. So it's going to stay white, and the ink will just sit on top. So I'm going to go ahead and blend my yellow all in and around. I thought this would create a nice soft look. And then I'll just take my cloth and wipe away any of that ink that's sitting on top. Okay, so I'm going to die cut this out. And then you'll see that little tiny triangle piece. This is the top piece of the cake, and because this was not ink blended and it was stamped, there's a little white border. But when I cut out the piece of cake, because I ink blended outside the lines, the entire cake is yellow. So I just had to add some ink to create an all yellow top, basically. Okay, so moving along here, I'm going to cut a little tag out of a scrap of cardstock. This tag measures 3 3/4 by 4 1/4. I'm going to grab those little dot stamps from the Birthday Bash stamp set. This has to be my most favorite stamp in the entire set. It's so simple, but it's so much fun. You can create so much color and fun variations in your project with something so small like this. So I've gone ahead and stamped this with a whole bunch of colors, and to create a little bit of a rainbow effect behind my cake. And I'm going to pop my cake up with some craft foam. And I'm just going to apply the adhesive to my card because adhesive doesn't really like to stick to craft foam. So either I have to use liquid glue or double-sided tape on the card rather than on the back of the cake. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more adhesive, pop up my little triangle piece on top of my cake and get that lined up. Now we have a 3D looking golden cake. So pretty. Okay, now the other day I had shared a video where I created a whole bunch of sentiments, and I'm telling you, I keep going back to this over and over and over again. I have all of these little strip sentiments inside the back of this stamp set, and this stamp set comes in the Birthday Bash card kit, which will be released separately very shortly. Gina K has a new release coming out, and you'll be able to buy these stamps individually. When they're available, I'll have everything linked in the description box down below. For now, they're still available as a kit, and you can find that down below as well. Until it's no longer available, then I'll switch out the links for the individual stamps. So I grabbed the little happy birthday sentiment from my little stash, and I just cut it apart and trimmed off the edges so I could stack that happy birthday on top of each other. I think that looks really cute. And then I'm going to take a corner punch and I'm going to round the corners on the bottom of this tag. And now to create the tag, I'm going to take my scissors and just cut a little bit of an angle on the corner of this piece of cardstock. And then I'm going to take that little offcut piece and I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to use it as a guide. And I'm just going to trim off the other corner. I really don't like doing this. I find it very fiddly and it doesn't always become perfect, but in today's sample, I'm only making one tag, so I have to do it this way. Okay, I'm going to punch a hole with my crocodile. And my crocodile is just a big old fancy hole punch. You can just, punch it with a simple hole punch if you've got it. And I'll use a piece of baker's twine and run that through the top of this tag and create a little slip knot. And that's it. This tag is complete. It's so stinking cute. I just really love the way this turned out. It's the cutest little happy birthday. Okay, here's a close-up look at our finished tag. Let's move along to the finale of this video in our birthday bash trio. We're going to be making the gift bag. So to start off with the gift bag, I'm going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 8 by 8. You could use patterned paper here, but I decided I wanted to make some of my own paper with the same colors that I used in my card project and in my tag project so that everything coordinates together nicely. So I'm just got my big old Tonic Studios trimmer here and I'm going to trim these pieces of cardstock down to 8 by 8 inches. I'm going to be using my book about boxes and bags, and I'm going to use a template out of that book to create my bag today. So in order to turn these into a bag, I'm going to need to decorate them. So I'm going to grab some ink and a brayer, and I'm going to have some fun making a big old crafty mess. So I've gone ahead and I've sped this up a little bit so that we can just get through this process. There is no particular technique here. I'm just picking up color with my brayer and rolling it onto the cardstock. Just in any old-fashioned, just not doing anything specific, but just laying those colors down. And I like to overlap in some spots and double up in some spots to create some more depth and dimension and just making it look all crazy. Now the thing about Gina K Designs ink is that they have a smoothing agent inside of them, and it might look splotchy at first, but as it sets into the paper, it really dries back into this beautiful smooth finish. At the end of this video, I'll show you a really good close-up of the finished project, and you can see how well those colors blended and smoothed out. It looks really pretty. I'm just covering up all of that white paper, and I'm using a little ink pad holder that I have. There is a 3D print making guy in my neighborhood, and he made these for me. I'll link his website down below. He made a bunch of these for me, so I'm just sharing with you today how I incorporate these into my card making. They're really, really fun. They hold my ink pad in place, and I can roll around with my inky tools, and my ink pad will stay right where I need it to be. So I'm just about done here. I used Gina K Designs, Lemon Drop, Sea Glass, Apple Mint, and Innocent Pink to color this paper. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using the book about boxes and bags. I'm going to flip through this book, and it's got multiple templates to make many different sizes of bags, as well as box projects. This book is available for purchase, and you'll find it in my website listed in the description box down below. So I've got a bag that uses 12 by 12 inch cardstock, a bag that uses 10 by 10 inch cardstock, and a bag that uses 8 by 8 inch cardstock. So this is the one that we're going to be creating today, and it's got all the steps inside of it to show you how to create this bag. So I'm going to walk you through this nice and slow so that you can create a bag out of just pieces of cardstock. So our cardstock measuring 8 by 8 inches. The first score you're going to make, you want to pay attention here because whichever piece of your pattern paper that you want to be the top of your bag, you're going to make your first score. So I'm going to make sure that this piece is turned to the side of my scoreboard, and I'm going to score at 1 inch. And then I'm going to rotate my cardstock and score at 2 inches, and then rotate and score at 2 inches, and then rotate one more turn and score at 2 inches. So this is going to give us a score all the way around, with that 1 inch piece being the top part of the bag. For the second piece of cardstock, we're going to make the same scores: 1 inch, turn, 2 inches, turn, 2 inches, turn, 2 inches, and then we're done. And then we're going to move on to the next part of the template, and we're going to make some cuts. We are going to trim away the areas that are marked in blue in the template guide. Okay, so in our little pieces of paper here, we're going to start with the first piece. We're going to cut out those little tiny squares in the bottom, and you'll see the score marks will outline where you're cutting. Okay, so I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to go ahead and cut nice and straight right along that score line. So I'm cutting off a little 2 by 2 inch square out of the bottom of this cardstock. Then I'm going to move over to the other side, and I'm going to make the exact same cuts. I'm going to follow along that score line and cut away that little 2 by 2 inch square. Okay, so that's it for cutting on the first page. Let's go to the second page and we'll make some cuts there as well. Okay, so for the second page, all we're doing is cutting out the little tiniest little wedge in this section, as noted in the guide. Okay, so we're just going to come in and cut out a little tiny wedge. Basically what we're doing is we're going to allow these flaps to fold in different directions from each other. So we want to keep the integrity of the box, keep it nice and strong by not cutting apart the flaps, and use this to our advantage to create some strength in the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to cut out those slivers. Okay, and then you should have 2 pieces that look like the template guide. Okay, now the next step here, we're going to crease our folds. So for page 1 and page 2, there's that little 1 inch flap on the top of your paper. If you have double-sided paper, you could flip this and score it outwardly so that you have 2 different patterns on your bag. But since this is just regular white cardstock, I'm just going to go ahead and crease all of the folds, and I'm going to flip that little 1 inch strip on the inside of my bag. Okay, so I'm just going to come in and crease all of those score marks, folding everything inward, making sure that those crease marks are nice and sharp and right along those lines. And then once that's done, I'm going to adhere down that 1 inch strip so that it's just out of my way and I don't have to deal with it anymore. Okay, so I'm going to grab some double-sided adhesive and I'm just going to adhere that down. So then that step will be complete. The flap is sealed in, and then that will be the top of our bag. I'm just going to reinforce those crease marks where we folded up that paper because there's a little bit of bulk there. So I just want to make sure that everything's still scored nice and straight. And then we're going to move over and score the other piece. Okay, just kind of showing you how the bag comes together. Now we're going to go ahead and score all of the lines on this piece, doing the exact same thing, scoring all the sides, folding that little 1 inch strip down, applying adhesive to that strip, and then reinforcing our folds. So we are now ready to bring this bag to life. So I've got my 2 pieces and I'm going to attach them together on the bottom of each page. So I'm going to take page 1. This is actually page 2. I'm going to take page 1, which is in my right hand, and I'm going to apply adhesive to the flap of page 1 and adhere it down on top of page 2, creating the base of our bag. Okay, so I'm just going to cover that entire panel with adhesive, and then I'm going to take my time lining this up onto that other piece of cardstock, making sure that my score lines kind of don't overlap because I don't want to create any stress on the bottom of my bag. So I want to make sure this is lined up nice and good and press it in nice and good with my bone folder. Okay, then I'm going to take these little side flaps here and I'm going to fold in those little flaps and I'm going to adhere them up to the side walls of the bag. Okay, so I'm just going to apply adhesive onto the inside of these little flaps, stand up the bag, and then apply those pieces. We just want to make sure that the bag is nice and straight here, and this gets adhered. Then we're going to apply adhesive to the sides here, and we're going to sandwich those little flaps in between the sides of the bag. So we have the sides from page 1, and then the bottom flaps, and then the sides from page 2 adhered over top. Okay, so I'm going to use my bone folder and I'm going to burnish that adhesive in, make sure everything is sealed together nicely, and look how cute this little thing is. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is I'm just going to cinch the top of the bag. I'm just going to put my fingers in the center here and sort of guide it in. And I'm just going to sort of gently keep pressing on it until we get it to form a little pinched triangle in the center of the bag. And then I'm going to punch a few holes in the top here with my crocodile. And I'm going to grab some of that same baker's twine that I used earlier in this video, and I'm going to put it through 3 sides of my bag. So the reason for this is so that the little knot that we tied together ends up inside of the bag rather than outside. So I'm going to run it through 3 sides, and once I get into the 3rd side, I'm going to drop that piece into the bag. And then I'm going to go back to that other piece, and I'm going to put that through the final hole, and then I'm going to take the 2 pieces and tie them. Our knot will stay on the inside of the bag versus being on the outside. So when we pick up our handles, it's all stuck together, and we also won't have to worry about creating symmetrical pieces of ribbon and, you know, making sure that the knots are tied the exact same so that the handles are the same size. This way, the handles have, like, you know, a little bit of give and take so that it'll just kind of balance itself out when you go to pick it up, which I think is super cute. Now, there are 2 ways that you can carry this little tiny bag. You can pull the little strings from the inside, or you can pull them from the outside, and either way works. And our cute little bag is complete. And then all of these coordinate together perfectly with our birthday bash card, birthday bash tag, and then we have a matching gift bag to go along with it. Here's a close-up look at our finished projects for today, the Birthday Bash Trio. I had so much fun creating this set, and I love this beautiful soft color palette. There are really endless possibilities with this stamp set. You can create so many different things and have so much fun layering up cake and just having tons and tons of stamping fun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate the support as always. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd love to have you along my card making journey. Coming up on screen are a couple of videos I think you may enjoy. Have yourself a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!